The Gaza Strip is a tiny piece of land, just 24 miles long and a few miles wide. It's home to nearly 2 million Palestinians, 70% of whom are refugees. Gaza has been called an open-air prison, and today we will be talking about whether this is still the case. Ayman Nijim is from Gaza City, Palestine. He is a program coordinator for Afaq Jadeeda Association, located in Nusseirat Refugee Camp in the Gaza Strip. Ayman supervises Let Them Play and Heal, a program providing psychosocial support for children through drama, song, laughter, and dance. He has recently been in the U.S. attending the School for International Training in Vermont. Dr. Bill Slaughter is a psychiatrist with a practice in Cambridge. He also teaches at the Harvard Medical School. He is the current president of the Gaza Mental Health Foundation. Our guest interviewer for today is longtime civil and human rights activist Dr. Nancy Murray. Dr. Murray holds a PhD in history from Oxford University and has written extensively on civil and human rights issues. And now to the interview.
Hello, I'm Nancy Murray. Welcome to the Arabic Hour. Today we have two guests on the program. We have Dr. Bill Slaughter, who is a Cambridge-based psychiatrist who also teaches at Harvard Medical School, and we have with him a visitor from the Gaza Strip, Ayman Nijim, who works as a psychosocial mental health worker in the Nusseirat camp. Welcome both to the Arabic Hour.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah. Dr. Bill Slaughter is a psychiatrist with a practice in Cambridge. He teaches at the Harvard Medical School, and he is the current president of the Gaza Mental Health Foundation, which Dr. Elaine Hagopian and myself co-founded over a dozen years ago. In this capacity, Bill Slaughter recently paid a trip to the Gaza Strip where he met Ayman Nijim, who is working with a group called Afaq Jadeeda, a children's program called Let the Children Play and Heal. And I would now like to ask you, Ayman Nijim, to talk to us about that program.
Thanks for having me, Nancy. The project Let Them Play and Heal is one of the pioneering projects in the Gaza Strip, and it is one of the child protection projects also in all over the Gaza Strip. There are three components in the project Let Them Play and Heal. The first project is recreational shows for the kids in all of the schools in Gaza Strip. And in each recreational show there are a lot of sections, there are a lot of recreational activities for the kids, puppets, singing with the puppets, there are dabka, Arabic folk dance, and there are clowning, and there are singing with the children and songs made by the children. This is the first component. The second component is creative writing therapy. We are trying to cast the skills of the children in writing, and also in drawing, free drawing therapy. We are trying to help the kids to draw freely what's in their minds, what they are thinking about the current situation, and they could draw onto the paper. So the third component of the project, which is psychosocial training sessions, we try with a coordination with some of the community-based organizations in all over the Gaza Strip. We are trying to sensitize the women on how to deal with their children in times of war, in times of emergency, in times of crisis in the Gaza Strip, and to give them how to deal with their traumatized children, with the traumatized kids, in how to deal with them when they are very jealous, how to deal with them when they have involuntary urination, how to deal with them when they have when they are suffering from ongoing trauma and they are in the state of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's the work we are doing.
Is that a very common problem in the Gaza Strip, children with PTSD?
I think there is a new statistics now made by some of the mental health organizations that 92% of the kids in Gaza are traumatized, or they are suffering from ongoing trauma or complex trauma. In Gaza, the major diagnosis in Gaza is ongoing trauma. So if you, every child in Gaza experienced 3 traumatic experiences in his life, not more. There are maybe like 4 or 6, 10 more traumatic experiences in his life. So the trauma in Gaza is very vast, and it is one of the mental health issues in Gaza Strip.
So Bill, when you went to the Gaza Strip, this I believe was your first trip, was it?
It was. 4th attempt, first time I made it. Yeah.
And what was your reaction to this vast, traumatic situation that you faced?
Well, it was something to see, and I appreciate Ayman's guidance for some of the time I was there. You know, basically the whole population is traumatized. And, you know, we have this post-traumatic stress disorder construct that we talk about, but it is, I agree with Ayman, it's ongoing kind of, it's not post. It might be post for a couple hours or so, but it's really just ongoing. I was there in a park, some kids came up to me and had a sonic boom overhead. People would listen and wonder if those were drones. You know, and clearly it's throughout the whole region. I came through Israel, and people there have their levels of traumas as well. So, you know, it's a broad regional thing. With Gaza, I see as like the tip of the iceberg, the highest amount of trauma there.
And then you went to the program. You saw the children's program.
I did. I was there a little over 2 weeks. My primary goal as a first time there and working in social service, mental health field, healthcare, was to do what I could without very good Arabic language skills, but with a lot of good local guides to kind of survey or understand the broad lay of the land about healthcare, and especially, of course, mental health, psychosocial services. I spent 2 days at the New Horizons program, but also visit a lot of others, and kind of came away with an understanding of, you know, what different kinds of organizations, what their roles are there, which of course helps us in our foundation work of making some donations there yearly. So, yeah.
Well, I know that you grew up in the Gaza Strip, and you must as well have been traumatized by some of your life experiences.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that?
I think all of the Gaza kids were experiencing trauma in their life, because we lived all of our life under occupation. And for me, and all of my Palestinian friends, Palestinian youngsters, we could remember many stories about the detention, the curfews when we are kids. You could see that in every day you could see most of the people in Gaza Strip, or most of the youngsters and kids in Gaza Strip are somehow traumatized because of that situation, that disgusting situation, that horrible situation on the Palestinian people. I think, for me, I had a lot of trauma in my life because I lived under the occupation when I was a kid, and I traveled to Iraq in 2001 until 2005, and I experienced the war there. And I got stuck in Iraq in 2003 after the war waged against Iraq. So I got homeless like 4 days. I have no communication. You know, there was no communication. There was no telecommunication. There was no internet connection.
This was in Baghdad.
Yeah, that was in Baghdad. So and we have to be in touch with our family to say that we are alive, we are not dead. So it was like I spent 1.5 years trying to be connected with my family, but At that time, it was very stressful situation.
Were you studying there?
Yeah, I studied in Syria University in Baghdad, and I graduated from the College of Translation.
So you were able to graduate with the war raging around you?
Yeah, for me, because I lived under occupation in war-torn countries, and I determined to finish my school, because I believe if I go back to Gaza, I don't know how it goes. I don't know whether I could complete my study or not. So I determined to stay in Iraq, in Baghdad, and to finish my study.
But then when you went back to Gaza, you started the work in the Nusseirat camp, did you?
Yeah, when I went back to Gaza in 2005, I started to work as journalist with some of the international delegation who are coming to Gaza, who were coming to Gaza Strip for media coverage. And then I started to think about working with the children. So I worked in Save the Children Sweden, and worked for Palestine Save the Children also. And then I worked as project coordinator for Afaq Jadeeda Association, which stands for New Horizons in English. And the work we are doing as a community-based organization are very great, because we are doing to try to empower the women in the society, are doing to reduce the percentage of traumatized kids in Gaza Strip. Although we are a small community-based organization in the middle area of the Gaza Strip, but we have our own objectives, and we have our action planning, and we are doing according to our strategic planning and action planning. And I think we succeeded in the past 12 years of the establishment of New Horizon to do a great job for the people of Gaza. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask Dr. Bill Slaughter, what was your impression of mental health care in the Gaza Strip and the way mental health issues are regarded by the people of Gaza?
Well, issues are widespread, and you know, in all cultures, there's a bit of a hesitancy to reveal real personal issues around challenges that we have naturally, and I understand that that's true broadly in the Middle East and Arab cultures as well. What I found, though, was that because of the widespread trauma in Gaza, that it seemed, at least the people I was talking to, and they trying to introduce me to typical families and so on, that there's just no way not to acknowledge the widespread trauma that everyone goes through. My impression was, well, my experience was that there was a story in every person, a story of, the recent November 2012 war, the end of 2008, beginning 2009 cast-lead experience. You know, those are some of the major ones that stick in our minds, those of us who are interested in the region, but really there's kind of like daily shootings and incursions around the border areas and this and that just don't make our media, including some that I've heard of personally from Ayman about his house destruction and that.
When was that, Ayman?
Yeah.
It was in 2008.
Your house was destroyed?
Yeah.
Before cast-lead, or?
Yeah, during the cast-lead.
So it's just so widespread. One thing I was struck by, Nancy, was talking to staff of the 20 or so different organizations I was able to visit, with their focus usually on telling me of specific services they'd been providing to this child who was orphaned or this family who'd lost their housing, but also kind of just right under the surface were many of the caregivers wanting just a little bit of time with someone from the outside who hadn't been personally traumatized then, to just kind of talk a little bit about what their experience had been personally as a caregiver. You know, it's been recognized more and more in industrialized countries in general that caregivers, policemen and EMTs and so on, who are frequently on crisis, response, just what that's like for them. And in our country, there's more attention to that and more support and so on. Well, with it being an ongoing and population-wide situation in Gaza, that's a big issue right there. So naturally, there's primary focus of the caregivers, the widespread caregivers in Gaza, on people immediately in trauma now, but there's just not the infrastructure to have a secondary level of supporting the caregivers in their ongoing, caregiving exposure to the trauma themselves. So that's like a secondary level of challenge there in the Strip.
But at the same time, I believe you said you found an amazing degree of resilience.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. In many, many ways. And I was just looking back over some of the research as well. So if we are able to use any of the footage of some of Ayman's organization's New Horizons work in schools and some of the community centers, showing some of the celebrations, some of the psychodrama they use to kind of externalize some of the trauma that people go through directly, and then also just simply have a good time. There's a Women's Day celebration at one of the UNRWA schools, the second time I was with you, Ayman, showing competition between moms on different things that they did. Just the joy of that with the, the community rooting for one mom that they kind of knew or the other mom who were kind of competing. So dance, music, theater, just a lot of situations for people just to really, if you want to think of it from a neural point of view, exercise their joy pathways because their trauma pathways, and ways of being get so much exercise there, unfortunately. And long term, it's really things like that, fostering resilience as much as possible that'll probably stand Gaza and the whole area there, and of course the whole world, since that's such a nodal flashpoint, in good stead. If people are so locked into trauma ways of being, it does kind of reduce their ability to think of other options and things like that, which of course has family, individual, kind of locked in, constricted ways of being that's not good, but socially too. It kind of keeps the whole situation in conceptual box. So how to be able to think broadly and creatively is really, really important.
You say conceptual box, and I think the notion of Gaza Strip as a box, a closed-in box, is something that I always think of. I mean, it's one thing to have to deal with the war and the deprivation, but then not to be able to move, to have this virtual shut borders. I mean, I know that recently there have been times when people can leave, but would you talk about your own experience just coming to the U.S. this time?
Yes. My second time in the U.S., I get stuck in Gaza Strip just 4 days because the crossing was closed. And then I tried to change my flight more than one time and to pay extra money for the change. So when the crossing opened, all of a sudden I have to pack my baggage. I have to leave. In just 3 hours, I went to the crossing and traveled to Cairo. And after that, it is like for me, it is like a paradise to go to Cairo. But the crossing is one of the traumas of the war in Palestine. And in the first time when I came to the States, when I came to Olympia, Washington, I was a practitioner in international trauma treatment program, which founded by Dr. Jan van Eenwyk in Olympia, Washington. And I took their three months crash course about trauma healing in war zones. And it was one of my first experiences to come to Olympia, Washington, and I found that it is very great experience to be here. But I was stuck also before I came because there was some political impasse in Cairo. So I stuck also 2 months. The first
2
time,
months
yeah,
at the border.
yeah. In the first trip to the U.S., I stuck 2 months in Gaza Strip. So it was like it was very, very traumatized situation for me to wait.
So to have the economy largely reliant on the tunnels, I mean, is that still true in the Gaza Strip today, that the tunnel economy is a lifeline of sorts?
I think for my understandings in the situation in the Gaza Strip, if you leave the people without food or without no crossing to the world, without no connection with the world, and you want to kill all of the Gazan people, which are 2 million people in Gaza Strip, and we have no options just to use the tunnels. The Palestinian people, or who, like any political faction or any government in the world, if your community is in danger, is at stake, you have to find a solution for the people who are experiencing hard situation. Now there is a siege on Gaza Strip in 2007, and this siege negatively affected many parts of the life in Gaza Strip, and the Palestinian people or some groups found that the tunnels is the best way to help the people, to feed the people. If you are in their shoes, you will do what they are doing. Yeah.
Did you?
Nancy, about the idea of Gaza being a box, I want to say a little bit more about that. I used to work in a jail as a mental health worker. Some people call Gaza a big open air jail. You know, there's 1.8 million folks there now, according to our CIA's recent July estimate this month that we're filming this. You know, so much of the conflict in the area, wording is a problem. The area is so different, obviously, than the U.S. When we hear things like the Gaza box, so to speak, 25 miles long, 4 miles wide, about 12,500 people per square mile, very crammed in. When we hear things like the borders open, borders closed, things like that, and especially with the change in the Egyptian government with the border being open a little bit more, you know, as an American, I think in terms of borders being open. I grew up in Washington State, and we're used to going up to British Columbia. Borders open. Thousands of people pour across a day. Even when the border is open, in a good situation in Gaza, between the Gaza part of Palestine and Egypt, the number of people passing is tightly regulated, about 1,000 or so a day. So even an open border is still very much of a box. I was impressed in visiting some of the, especially United Nations plays such a big role in just basic health in Gaza, of basic medication stocking in the pharmacies there, in the UNRWA clinics. In the West Bank, they are missing about 15 or 20% of basic medications in another part of Palestine. In Gaza, it's 42%. So just very basic mental health, blood pressure, etc. kind of medications. Doctor visits per day in very stressed clinics. In the West Bank part of Palestine, other part of Palestine, about 100 doctor visits per doctor per day in the United Nations clinic. In Gaza, it's more like 115, 120 or so. So it is a box, even now in best conditions. And it reminds me a little bit, you know, the caloric intake of people in Gaza was strictly calculated by the occupation managers and the Israeli part nearby. So strict caloric managing and then putting in certain number of truckloads of calories, also known as food per day, reminded me a little bit of work I did in jail where you know, strict sized meals were passed through kind of cages to prisoners per day. Yes. So it is very much a box now, even under best conditions, month to month now.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the very alarming things that I have heard about is the UN report that predicts by 2020, I believe, it can become unlivable given the water, which is so contaminated. I know you're also involved, Ayman, in trying to do something about water. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, we have in our community-based organization, we have a project titled the Maya project. Maya stands for water in English. Until now, we established 38 purification units in all of the Gaza Strip, you know, the schools and some kindergartens in the Gaza Strip. So because there is no drinking water for the kids in the schools, we are trying to establish purification units inside the schools, so the kids will have or they will get access to water. So I think this project is one of the great projects in Gaza Strip, because you know about the water and about the theft of the underground water by Israel. And I just want to add that what's happening now, or what was happened in the past in the Gaza Strip, the main reason of it is the occupation. It's the Israeli occupation, and their control in everything. And some people said that Gaza is free. Gaza is free, but how come it is Israel said that we left Gaza in 2005? If you left Gaza in 2005, there must be no jet fighters in the sky. There must be no gunboats in the sea. There must be access to the West Bank. For instance, I haven't been in the West Bank, and a lot of my friends, a lot of the people in my age, they couldn't go to the West Bank or to visit the Holy Land, to visit Jerusalem, to visit Bethlehem, to visit. So we have no movement.
And such a large percentage of the residents of Gaza are refugees.
You are watching an interview by Dr. Nancy Murray with Ayman Nijim, Program Coordinator for the Afaq Refugee Camp in the Gaza Strip, and Dr. Bill Slaughter, a psychiatrist and current president of the Gaza Mental Health Foundation. We will be back with the remainder of the interview after this short break.
You are watching The Arabic Hour, a program of news, views, culture, cuisine, and the Arab American experience. To view today's program or any previous programs, log on to our website at www.arabichour.org.
What is the life of a refugee like today in terms of schools and food and jobs?
Yeah, I will give you some statistics about that. We have 8 refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, and Afaq Jadeeda, for instance, we are working in the middle area, the middle governorate of the Gaza Strip. The situation in the refugee camps is like the population are over densely populated area. It is over densely populated area, and the electricity is one of the big reasons in Gaza Strip. You know, Israel attacked the Gaza power plant in 2006, and the people got stuck. They have no enough electricity. They have just 6 hours per day. Imagine that you have just 6 hours of electricity per day, so you have all of the night, all in this hot summer. You couldn't stay in the house because there is no electricity, there is no fans or something good. So electricity, there is no electricity in Gaza Strip. The drinking water is very bad. You know, they are most of the Gazan refugees are relying on on water. They could buy it from like some vans in the streets, so they could buy water. So the water, we buy water. We buy water also. Regard to the fishing in Gaza Strip, the people couldn't go for fishing in the Mediterranean Sea because of the Israeli gunboats. They couldn't go for their work to look for their fishes. And I think the situation in the refugee camps also, it is very, 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 very alarming. Mm-hmm. Because what's happened now in Gaza Strip is very traumatized for the people. Like when you spend all of your life under occupation, it is something not good for the future.
And so the schools, I believe, are getting more and more crowded. They're
one of the days I visited New Horizons, the first day, seeing what kind of supports they give to basic education in the UNRWA schools. It happened to be at midday. So, and I didn't realize what was going on at first, but they said, well, the school is changing, the next school is coming. So I looked down the road thinking there'd be a new school building or something like that. It wasn't that. All the schools in Gaza are double shifted. Is it 7:30 to 1, 7:30 to 12 noon, and then 1 to 4? Is that the schedule?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So there are about 250 UNRWA schools in school buildings in Gaza. Each of them serves about 1,000 kids or so. So there are about 500 kids in the morning, 500 kids in the afternoon. So what that does is kind of truncate the school day and make the United Nations curriculum, and again, I can't stress how much the United Nations is caring for Gaza in so many ways, problematically in a lot of cases, but makes the basic curriculum restricted, of course, to math and basic language skills and things like that. So one thing that I saw the New Horizons staff doing with Ayman was kind of, they use the term enrichment some, but we see that in US context where enrichment sounds superfluous. Mm-hmm. They're doing basic things like some counseling in the schools, some of the art projects, things like that are psychologically focused to let kids express themselves more. I think any listener who's really interested, try to take a look at various UN, really well-founded surveys of Gaza. In the last 10 years, for instance, the number of refugees in Gaza, who are about 72% of people in Gaza currently, are from outside Gaza and waiting to for resolving their situation. The number of the refugees in Gaza, depending on UNRWA for very basic needs, day-to-day food and shelter, gone from 10% to 70% of the refugees in Gaza since the blockade there, which is tremendously overwhelming to the UN there. The UN compound was stormed in Gaza a couple weeks after I was there because they didn't simply have the money to give out food money, basic food money. So people were upset about that and concerned for their families. So that's challenging. When I think of Gaza, now everybody watching, think back to your high school or college psychology class. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? We have basic food, basic safety coming before kind of love and various psychological needs. A challenging thing working as a psychiatrist, going to Gaza, thinking about mental health, is I have to take a step down the hierarchy of needs just to very basic water and food, as you were discussing. How are those needs being grappled with in addition to the ongoing stress? One of the challenges regarding water is that Gaza, being such a small area, is part of a freshwater aquifer that extends into central Palestine up to Al-Khalil, Hebron area, up halfway to Akka, past Tel Aviv. Gaza's kind of at the low end of that, and the area immediately around the strip is largely agricultural, which takes a lot of that water into the Israel part of Palestine currently. So that leaves very little for Gaza, and decreasing amounts. Gaza doesn't have proper sewage treatment, discharges a lot of sewage into the Mediterranean, which I can attest to, or my nose can attest to from remembering going along the sea there, unfortunately. Desalinization for fresh water. Well, it's not only desalinization, but pollution correction from water that's taken out of the sea, and there's not nearly enough desalination plants. One UN reporter, this is from report last fall, said that a lot of water, many families are paying up to a third of their household income just for drinking water. So, on that hierarchy of needs, just basic physiological survival is part of the main struggle, I would say, in Gaza.
I think one thing that happens here is that a lot of attention is given to an agreement, a new agreement that Israel will open certain crossings and allow in certain amounts of food and, building materials and so on. And we keep being more or less told this, and so I think a lot of people here might think that the crisis is really over. Okay, there was, all the border crossings were closed, or there was this war, and then no building material could get in, but now we don't have to worry about it anymore. How would you reply to that? I mean, I know that there is more movement in than there was, but is the Gaza Strip really now able to get the materials it needs from the outside world?
I think I will take with a big word, no.
No.
It is just a propaganda.
Uh-huh.
And I would recommend all of the audience, the listeners, to go to some of the, not a newspaper, a human rights organization, and they could check about these lies against transportation, against export and imports from into Gaza Strip. I think it is siege by all means, by all the words. It is siege, and Israel tried for a long time, or since the beginning of the siege, tried to not to give more cement, more food to Gaza Strip. It is just like a propaganda that we will give Gaza food, cement and building materials. But it is like just rumors, and they want to buy the time. We will give you food, and the next day we will not give you food. I think there are a lot of rumors, and there are a lot of camouflage against the situation in the Gaza Strip. I think if you go to the Palestinian or also B'Tselem Israeli human rights, you will find a lot of information, or you could understand it if you come to Gaza Strip, and even you will have a look and you will understand everything without...
Yeah, I remember that for a while, students who were given even Fulbrights to study in the United States were not able to leave and come here and study. Is that still the case, that students who have been given these scholarships can't even travel here?
Yeah, I think there are strict measures. For me, I knew a lot of my friends who are very well educated, and their ambition, their aspiration in the future was to study in the United States of America, and to some schools in Boston and in Washington State, but they lost their opportunity because of these administrative measures. Yeah. I knew a lot of my friends.
Now, you weren't in Gaza when this happened, but would you tell us your reaction to a Gazan winning the song contest in Beirut?
I was crying because this man is a very great singer for the Palestinian people, and he used to sing when he was 5 years old, and I felt very happy that one of my friends in Gaza, one of the people in Gaza got Arab Idol, that we are here, and if we have opportunities, if we have chances, we will do a great job. We are in Gaza Strip. You will find a lot of educated people with master degrees. 80% of the budget of any family will go to the education, even if the unemployment in Gaza are very high.
No, I know education is highly valued.
Yeah, education is highly valued in Gaza Strip. If you compare the the population of the Gaza Strip with other population. In some countries, you will find Gaza is well educated. Gazans people are very well educated, and you will find a lot of people who took their master degrees from different parts of the world. And and I felt very happy with the success of the Palestinian singer Muhammad Assaf. He is from Khan Younis, Khan Younis refugee camps. And I live in the Balagh refugee camp. We are like in the same situation. He is in Khan Younis, but we made it, and he made it to the world that we are still alive, and we will do everything possible for our self-determination and to show for all of the world. And we will touring all of the world to say that we have a right and just issue, and we will say to the world, as Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Give to the Palestinian people their rights. But what's happening now in settlements in the West Bank? There are like 500,000 of settlers in the West Bank. There are 100 outposts in the West Bank. Now, if you are talking about peace process, if you have to freeze the settlements in the West Bank, and the USA must stop funding these settlements, funding these the Israeli government, because for me I couldn't understand until now how you could give money for Israel, $3 billion per year for Israel, like $500 for every Israeli.
Right. Well, I'm sure people in Gaza have a special feeling about this because so many of the weapons that are used against them come from this country.
Yeah.
And I know that, made in USA, found on ordnance that's littered around, must be a very hard thing for you to accept.
I just want to add something more important. It doesn't make sense for me that you said for Israeli government stop or freeze the settlements in the West Bank, and you gave them money. Stop the funding, and everything will be okay. Now the settlements are the main barrier to achieving peace in Palestine. Settlements are the main barrier to achieving peace in Palestine, and since 1973, there was 32 United Nations resolution against Israel, and they gave a blind eye against this resolution. And now there are United States of America, for instance, they said freeze the settlements in Israel, but in the same time they are funding Israel. So it doesn't make sense if we want to achieve peace. Now John Kerry is in the region, and he is doing a shuttle tour in Amman and Jerusalem. I think if we want to achieve peace process, we have to freeze settlements. We have to focus on historical injustice. For me, yes.
Yep.
Bill, would you like to add anything? I mean, you've been to the West Bank, I think, on this trip as well.
Well, this one more in the Israel part of Palestine itself, but working in my field, I see a lot of positives, and it can take some work in that region to remember the positives, but there really are. I was struck by the people in Gaza who said, hey, I speak Hebrew pretty well. I used to live and work in Israel, and that basis is there to resume a better economy and just a language skills. I was struck by the groups in the Israel part of Palestine who were working in many ways for reconciliation. There's the Peace School, the Peace Village there's Beit Salem, as he was saying, the physicians groups for human rights, just many groups there. Zokhrot, Dakarat, trying to build social memory and think about next future steps and so on. So, there's a lot of positive groups there, but how to fan the flames, the right flames of peace, if you will, I think that's the basic challenge. I do want to scoot in just a little bit more about the education issue. I've personally known Palestinians since the 70s when I studied Arabic, and then mostly forgot it, unfortunately. Education has been a strong point of national pride for Palestine for a long time. I was sad to hear in a trip just last year in Jordan and Lebanon especially, at school principals, teachers, other educators there saying, you know, we're beginning to worry about the younger kids. The schools, the UNRWA, again, the United Nations Refugee and Works Administration schools there are just so pressured ongoingly now for decades that the quality of education is slipping in a lot of the near diaspora in Jordan and Lebanon and Syria. Of course, it's a different situation entirely. But starting to worry that that basic cultural resiliency that Palestinians have been so proud of since the 1940s is starting to slip, with basic education across the board just not being able to keep up with the strong ongoing social pressures there. So that was discouraging to hear. One thing we're trying to do, as you know, Nancy, in our foundation, now back just within Gaza, at 15% of Palestinians who are in Gaza, is support specific training around good mental health care there. There are a lot of community members who, because of the ongoing population-wide trauma, people like Ayman with background in languages and so on, they're working in psychosocial programs. There are a few dozen psychiatrists and doctoral level psychologists in the Strip, but not enough by any means for the whole population need. So basically their role is to train workers in the grassroots organizations and so on. So we're trying to support that indigenous training there by people who know the culture to spread their knowledge more widely. That's a huge need in the Strip. People can't get out. Right. They can't get out in general. Few people do, but
so there is so much to be done. Yeah. I want to thank you both for all that you're doing. I want to thank you, Ayman, for joining us here.
Thanks. You're here.
And I hope that you get back safely and swiftly. I know that crossing the border is maybe not going to be that easy to get back into the Gaza Strip, but I wish you all the best. I'm sure we will be in touch in the year to come. And thank you, Bill Slaughter. This is Nancy Murray for the Arabic Hour, with our two guests, Dr. Bill Slaughter and Ayman Nijim.
Thanks.
That was an interview by Dr. Nancy Murray with Ayman Nijim, Program Coordinator for Afaq Jadeeda Association, located in Nusseirat Refugee Camp in the Gaza Strip, and Dr. Bill Slaughter, a psychiatrist and current president of the Gaza Mental Health Foundation. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more after this short break.
You are watching the Arabic Hour, a program of news, views, culture, cuisine, and the Arab American experience. To view today's program or any previous programs, log on to our website at www.arabichour.org.
Thank you so much for joining us. Some stations will be leaving us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. For those of you staying with us for the remainder of the hour, we hope you enjoyed the last musical segment following the closing credits. On behalf of all of the volunteers here at the Arabic Hour, this is Ghanwa Hakim, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
The Arabic Hour has been brought to you in part by the William G. Abdullah Memorial Library, a resource center for information and education on the Arab American experience, the American Arabic Benevolent Association, ABA, an umbrella association for community endeavors, the Nicholas G. Barham Veterans Association and Ladies Auxiliary, providing veteran services, scholarships with community pride, and by our members as well as contributions from viewers like you.